Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to Jamie Photography. So, some new updates in Lightroom, Photoshop, Camera Raw, Lightroom 14.4 and Camera Raw 17.4.1, which is June 2025. Nice updates, I must say. It gives us a little bit more to play with, and I'm going to take you through and explain the detail of what the updates are. And also, whilst we're at it, let's process an image. Let's do a little bit of day to night. So, this is the end result of the shot that we took. I'm going to take you through, explain how we did it. The image itself is of the Dickens Inn, which is in St Catherine's Dock in London, not far from Tower Bridge. A little bit of history with the Dickens Inn. So originally it was built as possibly a tea warehouse back as early as 1720 and did a lot of trade through the years. And it was rebuilt into a restaurant stroke pub that it is today in 1976. It was actually opened by Cedric Charles Dickens, who's the great grandson of Charles Dickens himself. So I'm pretty sure that Charles Dickens would have been pretty impressed with this. But Charles Dickens himself never actually went here. As I say, 1976, Cedric opened it. So it's a lovely place to visit. Nice walk around. Lots of lovely little restaurants in this area here. But the updates, Lightroom and Camera Raw. Now, just to make sure that you've actually got the updates and you're in the right place, you need to go into your Creative Cloud, Adobe Creative Cloud app, which on a Mac sits up here in the top bar, and I think in a Windows it's down the bottom right corner. You can go into there. What you need to do is go into apps on the left-hand side here, click on apps, and it will show you all the apps that you've got. You go to view updates on the right-hand side, and it will tell you where you are with all your updates on the apps that you're using. In this case, Lightroom Classic I use, Photoshop, Beta and Camera Raw. And if there's anything else that needs updating, it will show here. And you'll have an update button over here if you haven't already done it. So it does take a little bit of time to download and update, but it's worth keeping up to date with the apps that they have. So 14.4 for Lightroom Classic and Camera Raw 17.4.1. If you've got 5 minutes, links down below, pop over and have a look at my website. I've got a couple of Sky Packs available. And unlike others, I do actually provide the high-res DNG 16-bit images as well at a reasonable price. I'm trying to keep the prices sensible for those too. So I've got a nighttime and a sunset pack, and I'll be using one of those sunset pack images in this shot here. But of course, you can use your own sunset as we go through. If you enjoyed the video, please click like. I always welcome your comments, questions, and any tips that you might have. Please put those down below. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, it'd be great for you to join me. We can continue on this adventure together. Okay, let's get started. So Lightroom 14.4 update and Camera Raw 17.4.1, which I'll show you shortly. But what's new? Well, there's some quite interesting stuff that they've added for us. What you can find in the remove tool here is a new edition of the people distractions that they had in Photoshop, and they've now added it to Lightroom. I don't have any people in this shot, which is this image I'm going to actually take you through today, and we're going to do some work on this one. Let me show you an image that we've got with people in. There we go. It finds out where the people are. It's detected where the people are, as you can see there. And then what we can do is look to see whether they're all people, which in this case they all are. Sometimes it will give you something that isn't necessarily a person, and all you do is click on the actual item and then press delete on your keyboard, and that will remove the selected item. So what we're going to do is remove these. So I'm just going to click on remove, and it says 7 seconds there to remove, but actually it does it quite a bit quicker. There we go. It's removed those there. It's for some reason put people back in their places in two places. You can see there, if I click on that and press delete, you'll see it puts it back to the original person. Same with this little one here, press delete, it will put that person back. But obviously what you can do is you can select the actual item itself, and there are 3 variations for each one. Now the important thing to understand is this doesn't actually affect your generative fill tokens when you're using it here in Lightroom at the moment. So you can have a good play around with these. This one here is pretty good. You've got the bottom of the lantern in. The wall's been replaced quite well. Same with this one. There's no real issue with this one. This one here, well, they've replaced people with bollards. There's 2 bollards here. So we've got the variations available. So let's click on the next variation. It's number 2. different types of bollards it's provided. And number 3, there's some flowers. So it's not perfect, but the rest of this looks reasonably okay, but the phone box isn't really doing quite well there. So, I'm not going to accept that one. I'm just going to say no by deleting that one, and that'll put the people back. And what we could do is go into Photoshop to remove those. The one over here looks pretty good. This one here is excellent. It's replaced, so you can leave that one in. There is 3 variations again, 1, 2, and 3. So is it 3 or 1 that's the best? I think 1's still the best one there. So it's reasonably accurate, and I think if you've got a plainer background, I think it will certainly work well for you just as a one-off, remove all the people. At the moment, I still think it's advisable to go into Photoshop and use the remove tool in there, which is very, very, very capable. Anyway, let's go back to the actual image that we're going to be working with. So what else is new? Well, the enhanced mode, we used to be able to right click in here and go to enhance here, but that doesn't actually have anything in there anymore. What we now have is, if you go down to the details section on the right hand side, which is, if you click enhance, it will take you to detail. You'll find that denoise has now been added as a non-destructive process. Remember before, if we did a denoise, it made a new file, and that was, then you always had 2 files. You could stack them, but it now is non-destructive. You also have raw details, which you can select separately if you want to, and that's certainly very useful if you're a Fuji shooter. That corrects some of the artifacting that you can get with Fuji cameras. It certainly works very well on there. And you have super resolution. Now, you can't do denoise and super resolution at the same time inside Lightroom, but what we'll do is we'll click on denoise and we'll let it run the denoise algorithm there. What you can do is you can pass it over into Photoshop. You can bring it back from Photoshop as a TIFF, and then you can run super resolution on it if you wanted to, which doubles the resolution of it. So denoise is now done, but as you see, no additional file has been provided. It's still the same original file. And what's really good now is that we can move the slider in denoise, play around with the different levels of noise. Now, you can't see it at this level, so let me zoom in. We'll zoom in over here, and let's have a look at this sort of dark area. Let's open up the shadows here, which always exposes the noise. So the denoise is, we've got quite high at the moment. So if we turn denoise off, you'll see the grain appear there on the door look and on the sign on the wall. We turn it back on again, and it's pretty well gone. There's a couple of little minor areas, but what we can do is reduce the amount of denoise till it's on a balance point. You don't want too much, because it will take away a little bit of the detail. But in this case, I think around about 50% is working quite well. So this little eye allows you to see before and after. So there's the before, there's the after. Big improvement, big improvement. And you'll see that it automatically selected raw details when it did that with denoise. It does that functionality. So let's bring those shadows back down again. We've also got some additional features related to tethering. So if you are in a studio, you are shooting your camera straight to Lightroom, the tethering support function now includes the Fuji cameras as well, which is very, very good. And there's been some overall performance improvements as well, particularly for the more modern processors. So the zooming in and the zooming out now is really, really smooth. But it also has helped a little bit towards the denoise functions and some of the other AI functions that are now starting to appear. There is also a duplicate detection improvement. So when you go into your import and you go to import, it will look at the files that you've got, and it will consider whether you've already got them in there. So don't import suspected duplicates. You can turn that on, and it can see that these are the ones that we already imported, this is the one we didn't. But it's much better than it was, which is very good. So you can switch that on and off as necessary when you're importing. Also, it remembers where you were. So if you have one picture or multiple pictures selected within a particular folder, and you change to a different folder, and you select one in there, when you come back to the folder you're working on, it still has the selection that you had. That's quite a nice little additional feature. I think I'm quite impressed with that. So let's go back into the develop module. Here we go. So We're going to do a bit of day tonight, you know me, can't resist it. Do need to tidy this image up just a little bit, and also I'd like to put a sky replacement in. So to do that, I'm just going to add a little bit more contrast in this shot here. I'm going to open up the shadows just a little bit more, and I'm definitely going to bring down the highlights. So we get a nice strong edge along these buildings against that sort of bluey grey sky. That will help us get the fine edge we need for the sky replacement. I'll do some cropping later on, but for now I think what we're going to do is going to send this over into Photoshop, and then I can show you the new Camera Raw feature as well. So there's a right click on this image, going to go to Edit In, and then I'm going to go up to the top there, Adobe Photoshop 2025, and then we're going to move over into Adobe Photoshop. Here we go, and we've got the image here. So let's have a look at the new features first. So what we can do, the new features in Camera Raw. So we go to Filter at the top here, and you can pick up on Camera Raw. Now, Camera Raw works very similar to Lightroom in terms of the availability of tools and the way it works. And when you go in here, you'll find, let me just make that full size. You'll find that down the right-hand side, you've got the similar tool selection, including masks. We can take a mask and do the same things as necessary. What's new is in the color mixer, and it's under point color, and what you'll find is there's now a variance slider, which is really, really useful. Now, just before I show you that, some people say to me, well, Jamie, why don't you do all your images in Camera Raw? It's the same as Lightroom. You can stay in Photoshop, you can do the corrections you want to stay in Photoshop, and I agree, very straightforward and simple to do. And if I was just wanting to make some minor tweaks, I might do that in Photoshop using Camera Raw. The reason why I use Lightroom is it's got a really good file management system, and we have all the folders, structures, and we're able to move between multiple files, work on multiple images as we go through, so we can sort of be more efficient with our post-processing. This feature here, Camera Raw in Photoshop, gives you all the features, so we can use it as a filter, we can make changes, we can come back into Photoshop if you're working on one image. So it's up to you how you use it. But my preference is that I file manage through Lightroom and do most of my adjustments there. And then I use Photoshop for particular activities, particular tools, which I think you've seen me use along the way. So let's have a look at the variance tool here. So to use the variance tool, we need to take a point color. So we need to take this little eyedropper. You can see it here. If I select that, and I can pick a color, any color I like. So the brick colors or the plants. I think we'll take these plants. So I'm going to pick quite a bright green there. There we go. We've got quite a bright green selected on that plant there. And now you have the normal settings for point color, hue, saturation, and luminance. So we can, if we want, take this color green here and we can make it brighter. There we go. I've moved the luminance slider over, and it's given it a little bit more pop. All these plants are picked up as well. But what variance does, it considers all the different tones in that particular color and either makes the gap between those colors greater or it makes them closer. So if I move the slider to the right, you'll see that we get much more of a differentiation between the greens, so the bright greens and these lighter greens. If I move it back to the middle there, you'll see that we go back to where we were. Now, if I move it to the left, what you do is you make all the colors closer together. So all the greens become closer together. So that bright green, it's nice that I can bring all the other greens closer together. So again, if I put it back to the middle there, you'll see, let me just put that back to the middle. There we go. You'll see we go back to the original color. So it's up to you how you want to use this slider. If I move it to the left, I get nice bright greens everywhere. If I move it to the right, I get a greater division between the colors. So the less bright greens are now more less bright and more less colorful than there. So in this case, I actually would rather go to the left to try to bring a lot of the colors much closer together in the brightness. Now, you can use the eyedropper again and pick a different area. So for instance, I could go to these bricks and pick a brick here, and you'll see that a separate color palette has come up. And the left-hand one has got two different shades of the green that we picked now. So that's the variance color versus the color that we picked. So the top left is the color we picked, the bottom right is the color that we chose to go to in terms of the variance. So now I've selected the bricks. Let's do the same to the bricks. Let's move them to the left. You can see there's more color in those bricks, and if we move it over to the right, you can see that the colors become less bright, more differentiated. So there's more difference of color. You can see in the bricks here, we've got the different colors oranges. So if I move that to the left, you'll see that they all become the same color. So in this case, I've used the green to move to the left because I want to bring all the greens closer together in their colors, brighter greens. And in the case of the bricks, I actually want to go the other way because I want to sort of show all these different colors. Now 100% is too much because we're getting reds in here. So let's just bring that back so that we're just getting those different tones and the oranges, which work really, really well. So there we go on plus 31 on that color. And if I go back to the greens, we were at minus 81. And that's a really good use of variance sliders. Well, in the point color module here, what you'll also notice is that now you have a color selected and you've made your variance selection as we have here on the greens. The other three sliders are still relevant. You can still move those around, still make changes. So for example, looking at the greens here, going to the hue slider, we can move to the right and make everything more sort of greeny blue, or we can go to the left and make things more greeny orange, which gives us a really nice tone in those colors there, doesn't it? I can move that further over, get a real change. You look at this particular plant in the middle here, you can see that it's gone almost to a sort of that tawny color. And if I go back to the center, you see we get the green back. And if I go further over, we go into the sort of exotic green. So it's quite a powerful tool. You've got to be gentle with it. I'm actually going to take it perhaps a little bit to the left. Going to come out here. I'm also going to saturate those greens just a little bit more by bringing the saturation up. We already changed the luminance in there. We'll just look at the bricks again. We'll go into the bricks here. We can make them more orange rather than that reddy color. And again, if you look at the area, now I can move the variance again and get more of the orange rather than necessarily the red. So we can play around with that as well. You can keep going if you want to. You can select the eyedropper again and say, well, let's pick up on this cobbled color down here, and we can look at how variance affects that. So to the left, everything is more the same. To the right, there's more change of color. And again, if I keep going to the right, you'll see we've got quite a high change in colors now. It's noticed the difference in the colors. It's a bit much, but I can leave the variance at 100%. What I can do is I can bring the saturation down just a little bit. So we've still got all those color changes there, which looks really nice. So I'm really happy about that. And hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into the new point color option, this variance. It says it's in early access, but I find it's working extremely well. So I'm just going to click OK. That will take us back into Photoshop with those changes applied. And what we want to do now is just prepare this image ready for our sort of final processing into a day to night. So I do want to put a sky replacement in. So let's do that first. Let's go up to Edit. Let's go down to sky replacement. And we made those changes as I showed earlier by dropping the highlights to give us a strong edge. So I've just got one of the skies here. It's one of my skies. Those skies are available. I've got a sunset pack and a night pack. Please have a look at my website. The link's down below. You'll find the sky packs. I'm quite reasonable with the pricing, and I also offer something that very few others offer, which is you can also download the skies for a little bit extra, but in full 16-bit DNG files as well. So it gives you a lot of flexibility with those skies. So I'm not going to change the sky. I'm quite happy with the sky. Let's just perhaps move it around a little bit. Find an area where it works quite well. Do we want it with the oranges? I suspect we do. This edge needs to be cleaned up just a little bit. So let's move the shift edge to the right a little bit to get a stronger coming in, but it does overlap the buildings. So let's not go too much on that. Let's use fade edge, go to the left. You can see it brings it back in. Still picking up a bit on top of those buildings, but we'll deal with that in a second. If I go to the right, you see we've got a halo around there. So we want fade edge to the left, maybe a little bit more shift edge on there. That works okay. Do we want to make it more orange? We could add a little bit more orange, a little bit more temperature in there. Happy with that. You've got the foreground, so that's obviously the building in the foreground. So we can move that to see what the foreground lighting effect is. Try and find where that works best. and I'm probably going to go in there around about 60. I'm going to do the same with edge lighting, so push it all the way to the left to see that the buildings get cleaned up a little bit, all the way to the right to find the sky comes in onto the buildings just a little bit. So again, same thing, I'm probably going to come in around about 60. And the color adjustment slider, that takes the color of the sky and applies it to the foreground. To the left is less, and to the right is more, and you can bring that color in there. So it's not going to go too mad in there, but I'm going to bring that color in just a little bit. So let's just use the refine tool here. It's the second tool down, and I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger. We'll zoom in a little bit over here as well. So let's just go to the zoom in, the magnifying glass there. We'll go into those buildings, back to the refine brush. Now you'll notice in the center it's very tiny, you can't really see it here, but if you hold down the Alt or Option key, it turns to a minus, and if you don't, it's a positive. So if I hold it on a minus, I want to remove it from these buildings here. So I can start off just by sort of coming in, just overlapping the edge ever so slightly, and the refine tool job is to try to make sure that we leave the sky in place, but we take it off the buildings. Here we go. And we might want to put a little bit more inside. So I'm going to take a smaller brush here, and I'm going to not hold down the option because I want the positive, and I'm just going to bring that back in just a little bit there. So we can bring that sky back in. We can make it bigger and just take that out and go along that edge. So you can work from the sky towards the building or the building towards the sky. That's so negative to remove it from the buildings. So I'm just going to come back in there again. There we go. And the positive to add the sky in. So along the top of the building here, same thing. I'm just going to click the Option or Alt key just to get a little minus running. And then I'm just going to run along that edge. You can see there, just removing that sky color that we've got in there. So holding down the Option or Alt key. Here we go. And just removing it. Let's see how well it works on the buildings up there. Just get rid of a little bit of that. Seems to work okay. Over to here, holding down the Option or Alt key just to remove it off this building here. There we go. So not holding it down, just adding that bit of sky back in, look, just round there. There we go. Over to this side, holding down the Option or Alt key, just run along that edge just to make sure it's not on the roof or on this bit here. That's good. So happy with that. Let's just go back. So we zoom, hold down the Option key to make it a minus so we can zoom out. And then I'm just going to move the sky to find the best final position. I think it's going to be around about maybe a bit lower, maybe here. Reason being, I want that reflection off that window is the same color as the sky, which works quite well. So happy with that. So when you are happy with that, you've got everything as you want it. Down the bottom, you've got your output. You can select new layers or duplicate layers. I use duplicate layers because I only want one layer coming out of this. I don't want every layer for every adjustment within the sky. I click OK. And I've now got the two here. I don't want the bottom one. So I'm just going to right click and get rid of that. I don't need that layer anymore because I'm happy with the top one, and I've just undone the padlock, so we're free to do as we please with this image. So we've got that color in, quite nice. I want to just go around and have a little bit of a tidy up in here. There's a few things I don't like. I'd like to remove these signs. There's a red sign here, and there's a box over here. So we'll use one of my favorite tools. We'll go into the remove tool. You can click J for remove tool. If you right click, you'll get your different options. In this case, I'm just going to select the remove tool, and we're gonna zoom in over to the right, and we're gonna just start to work around some of these things here. So there's cables on the wall I don't like, so I'm just gonna click once, hold down the Shift key, and click again to get a little bit of a straight line. Just get the bottom of that one there, and then I can click check to get rid of it. Now, the reason why I was able to do a click and then shift click to do a straight line is because I have the remove after each stroke turned off up the top here in the remove tool. Okay, so we've got this pipe here, not too happy about having that showing. And also there's this box. I have no idea what it is, some sort of charging unit or something. So we'll just highlight that as well. And then we'll click check again to get rid of those. So remove tool always completely fascinates me, how it gets rid of everything. There's a drain here, never a fan of drains, so I can just go in there, highlight these and just remove them. Just tidies up the shot just a little bit more. You can see there's a few around. You can change, whilst you're selecting, you can change your brush size. So let's click on that. That'll get rid of the drains. Lovely job. Now let's get rid of this little sign here, this road work. So get rid of the shadow that goes with it as well. There we go. So again, click on the check mark. It's got rid of that. So happy with this side. So hold down the space bar. I'm just going to move across. I tell you what, whilst we're here, we'll do this big drain. So one thing you can do with the remove tool, if you're going to do just one circumference around something like this, you can go around. If you just let go, once you've completed your circumference, like so, it will infill that automatically. And then you can click the check mark to remove it. Let's see how well it does. It's quite a big remove down there. Yeah, that's okay. Really, I could do with a line back in there. So just going to undo that with Command or Control Z. And what we'll do is we'll go to the polygonal tool, okay, which is inside the lasso tool L. And the polygonal tool allows us to draw some straight lines. So we can just click and draw around and just remove. So just going around it, as you can see, I'm just going to come back in there, through there. So I've made a selection using the polygonal tool. I'm going to use generative fill. So this will use your tokens when you do this. And depending where you are in the world, depending what subscription you got, will depend on how many tokens that you get. So I've clicked generate. And there we go. That's slightly better than the remove tool. We're going to give one of the second options there and the third option. Third option is very, very good. Happy with that. So I'm just going to bring these two layers together on the right hand side. So just merge visible. I right clicked on any one of them and clicked merge visible. So let's continue across. I'm going to go back to the remove tool. So things like leaves we can remove. You can always do that if just make the brush roughly the size of the object that you're trying to remove. And it'll just take a little bit of a distraction away. If you're going to blow an image up really large and put it on the wall for people to see, trust me, when it's large and it's on the wall, everybody will look at these little marks and leaves that you see here, and it will draw their eye away from the overall image. So it's always worth just having a few minutes just going around and just picking up on anything that is slightly sort of distracting. And also, I've said this before, but I think it's like some sort of therapy, to be honest. Cleaning up these images, I do enjoy it very much. So I'm just going around selecting them. There's a leaf out there, look. There's a cigarette butt there that's rather distracting. Maybe we'll try and remove that drain as well. And in fact, it's not a drain. It is a telecoms cover, but we can just go in there, and depending on how much detail you want to get into, you can really get into some detail by just sort of clicking around, and you can zoom in more and more and more. It's up to you, just to get as much of the image cleaned up. So I'm just going to take those main items, these sort of bright leaves, out of the way. So there's one left there that I definitely want to do. Good. So we've got quite a few selections, as you can see there. There's quite a few selected, but it doesn't matter. We can then click the check mark and it will work on all of those, and boom, as by magic, they're all gone, which is really, really good. I'm just going to take that one out over there. So there is a little edge of a drain down here in the bottom corner, some sort of manhole cover. So let's just take that out as well. Hopefully the remove tool will deal with that one okay. Yeah, that's fine. Now, we know the remove tool doesn't work too well on here, so let's go back to the polygonal tool. Let's zoom in on this this telecoms cover, and let's just take ourselves a line around the outside. Nice and easy, nice and quick, using the polygonal tool. Generative fill and generate. Now this is quite an interesting one to see how it copes with it. But it's done quite well. Option 1, colour's slightly more blue. Option 2, blue, more blue again. It's changed the colour of these stones. And there we go, 3's working quite well. So I'll accept that. I'm going to go over to the layers here, right click and just merge those again. Now you can use Command Shift E to do that if you want to. It's a nice easy shortcut on the keyboard. As you say, now we're zoomed right in. You can see all these little bits of more rubbish and bits and pieces. So as you say, you can just keep going. You know, you can make your brush smaller here, and you can just start picking up on these little bits. But I'll give you an example. I've just highlighted that one. We go all the way back to the main image here, and you're hard to see the little one that we were changing. But if you're going to make it into a work of art, then spend the time and get it right, make it look good. So I saw, what did I see? An alarm box. You know me and alarm boxes. So alarm box up on the wall there. Just highlight that. Anything else here that we want to deal with? Not for the moment. I will deal with this sign. Maybe the remove tool can deal with that. Okay. So we're just going to go around there, let it fill in the center, click the check key, and that's excellent. That's gone. Quiz night. Let's get rid of this board. I'm not sure the remove tool is going to cope with this particularly well, but let's give it a chance. It saves on a token if we don't need it. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm going to live with that. I don't need to go into generative fill. A little bit further over. Now it's all rather a little bit cluttered and a little bit detailed over here. This bit of railing, this steel box, which is actually part of a pedestrian bridge that crosses over St Catherine's Dock here. We'll have to consider what we want to do with this. Let's go back into the polygonal tool here. Right, this time I'm going to select the whole boat, because I think it may be the blue boat that's actually concerning the whole issue here. Just coming down here, I'm just going to take out everything that's in that little distraction down there, and we're going to do the generative fill and generate again. So that's option 1. Option 2, that's looking a little bit better. Option 3, I like option 3. That works very, very well. A little bit of fencing in there. It's a bit bent, but so is this one, that's the existing one over here. So I think that works okay. So I'm just going to bring those two together. So Command Shift E brings them together. So that's right click, merge layers. Just going to take the remove tool and just take that little bit of signage and that little bit of post out, hit the check key. It's cleared that up for us. So happy with that. Little distraction there with the lifesaver in the background, because it's bright red against that. All that area is white and green. So we'll remove that. So I think we're in a good place. So let's just zoom back, fit screen. So I just use the zoom tool there, fit screen, and we've got what we want, I think. Yeah, we'll do some cropping and some changes now in Lightroom, and we'll also light this up as a nighttime shot. So yep, happy. So we've got a single layer to keep our file size small. I'm going to go to File, Close, and Save, and that's going to send it back into Lightroom. Here it is. Now, first thing I'm going to do is the crop. So I'm going to go to the crop tool. We perhaps don't need quite so much here over on the left-hand side. And we don't need so much on the bottom here. So let's bring this up, bring it in around about here. That looks to be about right. Hit return. You can use fixed formats, as you're well aware. If you're in the crop, you can go where it says custom, make sure it's unlocked. That allows you to move it freely. If it's locked, you can fit to standard profiles here, which is quite useful if you're going to print. You can pick one of these. I'll pick 1610, for example. There we go. And it's done a crop for us. And happy with that. You just hit enter and you can go with that crop. So we have a standard size. Okay, good. Right, so we're here. A little bit oversaturated, so I'm just going to back the saturation off just a little bit. Quite a nice effect is to bring the saturation down and bring the vibrance up a little bit. And you get color contrast, which works quite well. We can also bring those greens back by going down into the color mixer and just taking the green slider here on saturation and just bringing that back up. So we can bring those greens back up and maybe a little bit of just a little bit of yellow just to make that green pop. So that's good. So let's go day to night. Now to do that, we need to take the whole image darker. So we go up to exposure and we'll come down on the exposure and we'll come down about, let's come down about 1.3 stops. Okay, it's quite dark now, but we'll brighten up the areas we want to illuminate. Just gonna bring a little bit off on the highlights just so these lights are not completely overexposed. Now, the interesting thing is when you look at this, one of the lights here is actually on, okay? So what we really need to do is make the other lights match that one, okay? That's the key. So how can we make this one look the same as this one? So let's light the lights. Let's match that color. So we're going to go in close here. So I've got the two shots of the first light that's on and the first light that's off here. So we've got them on the screen together. So you probably know my technique by now. I've shown it many times. Go to masks, select a radial gradient, take a radial gradient that's slightly larger than the lantern itself, place it over the lantern, but place the center where the lamp will be. And you can see here it's slightly towards the top. Okay, just gonna make that a little bit bigger. There we go. And then I'm just going to take the exposure to 100%, so it's maximum brightness. I'm going to take the temperature slider and just move it to the right until the color is almost the same. Now, if you just move the temperature slider just in the orange, you'll get this sort of greeny orange look. This is a little bit more golden, okay? To get that, you need to go to the tint slider and add in a little bit of magenta. So I can bring that magenta up just a little bit, and you can see that's almost the same color. Just to get the orange completely there, go to saturation and just give it a little bit more saturation, and then we've got the color match almost perfect. We need to remove the glare from around the outside, so within this mask we're going to subtract a brush, make sure the auto mask is off, the flow is at 100%, the feather is 0, because we want to remove all of that as we go around. I'm going to take a little bit smaller brush so I can get in a little bit closer. I'm going to click once, hold down the shift key and get in a line as we go up from there. And then come along the top here. I'm just going to keep my finger on the shift key and just work my way around to make sure that that lantern is fully masked around the edge. Same across the bottom. Just come in there. So we've got that mask. If you hover over the mask, you can see where we've gone with that removal. Make the brush a little bit bigger, and we'll just remove the rest of that now. So as you go around, if you make a mistake and you go in by mistake onto it, don't worry, just Command or Control Z or Z just to remove it, and that you can go along. It's nearly all non-destructive in here. It's really good. When you think you've got it, hover over the mask again and it will show you that there's no red anywhere around there. So that's perfect. Just want to put a little tiny line just down on this line here. Get a bit closer. We're in at pixel level now, but I can just make the brush roughly the right size and then just get a line down there. So click at the top, shift click at the bottom. That's a bit abrupt, so I'm just going to back that off, Command or Control Z to make it a little bit smaller. Go down the center of that. There we go. That's perfect. So we'll zoom back out so we're not at pixel level. Now, the key to get that lamp in there working is we're going to click on the center there, right click and duplicate the mask, not duplicate the radial filter, duplicate the mask because we want the exact mask as it was. We'll click on that new one that we've got. We'll bring it down until it's roughly the same size as the other lamp, and then we'll just back it off slightly on the exposure until it sort of matches. In fact, that actually works quite well. That might be a little bit bright. We can always go back to the first mask, the overall mask, and just bring that down a little bit as well, which will just give you that sort of almost perfect look to match this one over here. So that's pretty good. Let's just zoom back out. So we've got that one lit as well to match that one. That one, you know, could actually be a little bit brighter. There's quite an easy way to do that. Go into mask, create a mask, go to object selection, take a small brush, and what we can do is just do an object selection of the lantern itself. So just go around the lit part of the lantern like so. That'll select it as an object, and we can just bring up the exposure just slightly if we want to make it work. Add a little bit of contrast in there as well. So that's looking pretty good. What we do need to do now, though, is of course we need to light these other lights. So this one needs to be almost the same as this one. So we can just zoom in on that. Let's get in there a little bit closer. Let's take that radial, create a mask. Let's take a radial gradient, just like we just did. Pop it over the lantern with the center towards the top there. Bring up the exposure, bring up that yellow, bring in that little bit of magenta to give it that golden wash. Subtract a brush, and then we're just going to come in on the edge there, hold down the shift key, and when you get pretty proficient at this, you can get around these pretty quickly, make it work pretty smartly. I mean, I obviously take time to explain to you how we're doing it, but as you can see here, in the space of 30 seconds, we pretty well got that where we need it to be. I'm just going to put that little one in there just to make sure that works, and then right click, duplicate that mask, get that brighter one, make it the same size as the lamp that would be in there, just back it off ever so slightly. Let's zoom out and see how close it is to the other one. See, that works perfectly, right? So that's pretty good. What I'm going to do is do this one close in here, show you this one in more detail, and we'll do the ground around it, and then I'll just speed up the video to just finish the other ones off so we're not wasting too much time. So we don't need to go in quite so close now, so let's go into 100%. Let's do the same thing. We'll go into our mask, we create a new mask, we go to radial gradients, we take a decent size one like so. There we go. Take it to 100%. Add that color in. Because it's closer, the glass is cleaner, so you'll actually see more detail in there. If you want to make that brighter still, we can always just bring up the highlights and bring up the whites if you want to make it as bright as possible in there. And then we're going to go to subtract the brush, and we're going to take the brush here and go around the edge like we just did for the other ones. So I'm just going to come in there, click once, shift click again just to get that line. Just going to run around the top, so I'm shift clicking as I go around. There we go. And then we just come down this side again. There's a little bit light on the bottom of that, but I'm going to take that away. Make my brush bigger. And we're just going to do the same thing again. Look, we're just going to work our way around. There we go. Hover over the mask, a little bit of red showing still at the top there. So we've got that clear. Anything left? No, just do that bar. So small brush. Just coming down that bar there. Now it's a little bit on the edge of the top there, which you could just black out, but what you could also do is just drop the flow rate back. Take a slightly bigger brush there and just ease that line in with a slightly lower. So you've got a slightly different tinge there. Because we're much closer, there's a bit more detail. Let's click, right click, duplicate the mask. Got that super bright lamp in there now. Let's bring that one up and put it where it needs to be. It was towards the top. That works quite well. I'm sort of happy with that. Let's come out the mask and just pop back and see how that's working. So it could do with a little bit more brightness in the actual lamp itself, the lantern itself. The lamp is bright enough, clearly. So how we can do that is we go back into our masks. We pick the mask that was below, which was this one, number 4, because that number 5 is the lamp itself. So we can take, sorry, the mask 4 copy is the lamp itself. Let's put that over to one side for a second. Let's go into this one. Let's duplicate this one again. Okay. And of course it's very bright, but we're not changing anything. We're just going to bring down the the exposure. So we've got a brighter exposure in there. Then we can take the lamp, we can click on that, and we can put it back in at the top, but reduce that as well, so it's not burnt right out. Could be a bit too bright otherwise. So let's just do that. I might actually just increase that just so it bleeds through that top piece there. Now let's come out of the masks. Let's jump back. Now, because it's closer, that works better, doesn't it? These are further away, a little bit more detail with those. And we can also apply the same to these two, which I'll do in a second. But just before we do, just going to make the second mask in there not quite so bright. There you go. So we've got those sort of three masks laid on top of each other to get that perfect lantern effect. Now we want to put the light on the ground. Really important when we do these lights. And to do that, we're going to go to the Create Mask. Again, we're going to go to my favorite tool, the Radial Gradient. We're going to pull out a nice large radial like so. Now, a big mistake people make when they put light underneath a lantern is they tend to make it circular like this. And then they bring up their brightness and they think that looks, they think they're happy with that. You know, it works quite well. You could add a bit of color in there and perhaps be quite happy with that. But the reality is that the lantern casts a perfect circle. And because we have perspective, the angle we're coming in here, a perfect circle is actually more likely to be something like this. Now, I know you say, well, that's an oval. But if you measured the distance in the real place for here, I'm just going to tilt that slightly. If you measured from here on this stone across to those cobbles there, the distance would be almost the same as going from left to right in this shot because of the perspective. And it's important to always respect the perspective so that you get quite a nice lighting effect that is realistic. I think that's the important point here. So that might be just a little bit too bright. Let's just bring it down. What we can also do is add in some clarity. Clarity really works well when you've got lights. Watch around here when I add some clarity. It pops there. It really works quite well. So that's really nice. Probably still a shade too bright. There we go. So that's sort of how we apply the light underneath a lantern, how we do the work. So just going to speed up the video. I'm going to do these last three lanterns here. I'm also just going to put some light underneath them so you can see how they go. So back in a moment. I'm just going to jump back in on the video here and just show you a little bit here. We're going to light the lantern around the ground around the lantern here. Same sort of add the color, a little bit of magenta just to make it pop. We'll add in that little bit of clarity there as well. A little bit bright. So let's just drop it off a little bit. But what this lantern would do is it would light these plants and this tree, very much so. So we can do that a couple of ways. We can take a brush. Whilst we've got this radial, we can add a brush, and that brush can have 100% feather and relatively low flow, about 40%. And what we'll do is let's just zoom in a bit closer on this area. What we can do is now we've got this brush with a low flow, we can build up a little bit of light just by holding down and just keep going, pushing it back and forth, just easing that in there. And you can see we can create a light patch on that bush there. So I'm just going to get a little bit brighter there. Same along the top of these plants here. We can actually go in on the brush tool here, add the auto mask, and that will just pick up the lighter parts of this here. So just bring that out there like so, and you can see maybe a little bit along the top of those bricks there as well, a little bit on that bench. And that will sort of give you that little bit more brightness here, and those flowers would be very bright. So let's just take that brush down there a little bit and just brighten up the top of those flowers, just like so. That sort of lightens that up as well. So you get this sort of light on the bushes effect. The same would be the case over here by this light. So we can use the same brush, come over here, I'm just going to do the same in here. Bring the top of these bushes up. Just lighten that up in there. Look, just go back and forth. I'm just holding the mouse key down or the trackpad key down as I do that. I'm just going to add a little bit of light on top of those flowers there. And even the edge of this umbrella here would just pick a little bit of that light up. Because we've got the auto mask on, it will stick to the colors that you start with as you add them in and only lighten those areas. So you can see there, we can just pick up the top of those bushes, and you can see that that's worked quite well here. Just sort of brightened up the top of those plants. So it looks very natural when you do that. I find that works very well. So these hanging baskets is the same thing. We can brighten those up the same way. So we've still got that same brush there with the auto mask on. So I'm just picking up that green in there and just lightening those up. That's good. Happy with that. So let's just zoom back. So they're lit up nice and bright. Perhaps that could go a little bit brighter, to be fair. Let's turn off the auto mask there and just get in there and just make those a little bit brighter. There you go. So this lantern's the same over here. We're going to light underneath that. So select a radial. Couple of things just to finish this image off. There's a bit of an area here where there's nothing going on, so you could always mimic that there was a light just out of shot by taking another radial and then just bringing in, maybe in this corner here, just sort of a little bit of light there with that little bit of color. That just helps to sort of pick this area up down here. It could be a bit further up maybe to make it work like so. So just sort of playing with the lighting in the different areas. The front of the building, because we've subdued everything back, these lights don't look very bright. So we can either just take a brush and light the whole area up, but actually what works very well, create a new mask, go to select object, take a reasonable sized brush here, and then just pick up the front of that building. Just go over the top of that lantern, there we go. It's picked that area up, look, perfectly. And now we can make changes to the brightness there. So I can brighten up the whole area, add in a little bit more color just to make it work, a bit more magenta there to make it golden. So we've just lit the whole area up in one go rather than going to every single light. We can do that, and we can move the highlight slider either down or up to get different effects to where we need. So I'm just going to bring the highlights down slightly, but just bring that whole brightness up. And the same goes for these areas in here. You know, these need to be brighter as well. So create a mask, select an object, and what we'll do is we will just get in there, pick that area up and brighten that up. We can open up the shadows there just so you can see a little bit more what's going on underneath. It's a bit yellowy there. We'll take a bit of that green out by adding a bit of magenta. That's nice. I'm going to add to this selection because I like that color and I like that set, another object, and we're just going to bring that one in over here and just do the same here. So that lights that area up. Do we need to do that last little bit? Let's try it. Select another object, add another object in there and just pop that in. It'll just light that up. So this is a little bit bright. So let's just drop that back slightly. We can keep those shadows wide open. We can bring up the highlights just a little bit. And I'm just going to add a bit of contrast in there. And I think that works really well. So let's just finish off the sky. I just need to pop in a linear gradient just to bring some blue into that top corner there. So I've just brought linear gradient down. I don't want it on the building, so that linear gradient is going to be 3 dots there intersected with the sky. Okay, so effectively it's just the sky, not the building. And then we're going to add in a little bit of blue into the top of that shot there. Just enough to make it work. I might even turn that a little bit more and just get that blue in that top corner. That looks nice. And then what we'll do over here is perhaps add in a little bit. So create another mask, another linear gradient, and just come in from this side. Okay, go to the three dots, intersect it with the sky so that it's only the sky we're dealing with, and add in some warmth on this side. Maybe even a little bit brighter over there. There we go. Just put a little bit magenta in there, just get that sort of effect. Quite happy with that. Maybe we want to make that a bit brighter still. So let's create another mask. Let's go to radial gradient this time and put a radial gradient in the sky up here. Let's just turn it slightly, put it up in that sort of top corner there. Remember to intersect it with the, oops, not with the background, with the sky. So just undo that, Command C, and we will go to three dots, intersect with the sky. And that will just cut it back a little bit. And then we could just make that a little bit brighter up there with a bit more contrast. And maybe a little bit more color. It just gives us a little bit of contrast between the darker blue on the left and that sort of color up on the right. Maybe just a little bit bright. There we go. And I'm quite happy with that. A little bit dark in the center. Let's just take a radial gradient. Nice big one. Pop it in that whole dark area space there and just lift it ever so slightly. Add in just a little bit of warmth. There we go. And then I think we're pretty well there. We just do the final image corrections. So let's make the whole image just a little bit brighter, a little bit more contrast. Might open up the shadows just a little bit more and bring the highlights down just a little bit. Just to find that balance. And you know me, I always tend to like a little bit of a post-crop vignette. So we'll put a little bit of vignette in there. Remember to feather it off completely. So you open the feather to maximum. Yeah, I am happy with that. I think I'm going to stop there. So hopefully that gives you a good introduction into the new Lightroom and Camera Raw functions. It gives us a chance to do a bit more day tonight, as always. If you enjoyed the video, please click like, it always helps. And any comments that you may have, questions or tips, feel free to put them down below. And if you haven't already subscribed, feel free to do that and join me here. We're still having fun. And for now, I'm going to say bye-bye.